Welcome back to another week of Shark Jockey Weekly. Where it's myself, my co-host Calvin Pace, where we bring you the latest in sports news and culture. This week we got a jam-packed week. We're gonna talk a little college football and pro ball, and a little bit of off the field stuff. So Pace, let's jump into it, man. We saw where Dak Prescott got a contract extension, 4-year deal, worth $240 million. He gets $231 million guaranteed. That makes him that's rounds out to about $60 million a year. That makes him the highest paid player ever in NFL history. So let's look at it like this. I don't have an issue with him having the money. Go get it. It's there, it's available. But my question is, when you look at where it really matters for his position and the franchise, which is winning Super Bowls, going deep in the playoffs, with a quarterback that's 2-5 in the playoffs, do you think that not does he deserve it, but do you think that that was a good investment, and will the Cowboys get a return on that investment?
Yeah, it was the right investment. I mean, from the standpoint of if you look at Dak's numbers, I mean, they're legit. He was top three quarterback last year, barring injuries. From a yards perspective, in terms of throwing the ball, he's always up there in the top 10 quarterbacks. And just from a Jerry Jones and being real with himself, Dak Prescott would have been the hottest name on the free agency market if he would have hit free agency, and probably would have basically priced Jerry Jones out if he hadn't done a deal now. Because I'd be willing to bet somebody would be offering him in the $70 million a year range. And even from that standpoint, I'm gonna give you a quick little stat. 9 years ago, Aaron Rodgers was the highest paid quarterback at $22 million a year. Just 4 years ago, Patrick Mahomes was the highest paid quarterback at $45 million a year. So the numbers are just going to keep going and going. And the football world is if you're smart and if you can do it with your books, it's smart to just go ahead and lock a guy up. Because the longer you wait and the more he keep building numbers up, the more his camp going, they're going to be more and more firm with their numbers. And I'd be willing to bet they're going to go up. The closer they get to free agency, that number's going to get more and more astronomical. But just in terms of talking to Dak Prescott, man, I mean, in terms of active passer, he has a 98.5% rating. He's fifth of active quarterbacks. He's passing yards is at 29,638. He's 10th active. Touchdowns, he's 203. He's 10th active. Completion percentage, he's 66.9%. He's third active. I mean, he makes it go. I mean, even in looking at some of his playoff failures, just looking at the numbers, his numbers were good. Outside of the last year's playoff debacle in terms of turnovers, Dak is pretty much on par. If you look at some other numbers, the defense let him down a couple years. The running game couldn't get going, and the other team's running game got going. So I think on one spectrum, Dak is probably the luckiest football player to ever play in terms of leverage and position and being able to like hit it big. I don't know if we've ever seen another quarterback become a free agent. Typically, they get locked in years ago, and this is not a problem. And you're playing for the Cowboys, and you got a front man. You can't have a front man with no quarterback. Jerry can't go sell wolf tickets if he know he ain't got a quarterback. Um, so I think it's one of them things where Dak is going to prosper. I think he's just got to find a way in the playoffs. He's got to find a way to be better than the opposing quarterback, to make this deal work for both sides. And then just looking at the numbers, he had the Cowboys have a way out in year three. His cap number is only $34 million. This is 2027. And it's structured in a way that if things ain't going well, then year three they can cut their losses. So I think it was much needed. It had to be done. I mean, you just paid CD Lamb. You can't pay CD Lamb and be have the unknown in terms of quarterback play, because literally Jerry Jones are the only two options. Excuse me, was the draft, or I know Sam Darnold's going to be a free agent next year, and Daniel Jones in New York, who probably clock is ticking on him. So it's slim pickings out there. It's just a position where it's like a NASCAR driver. I know you're a racing fan of Formula One. It's only one Lewis Hamilton, and so once you start winning them races, or you can put fans in the seats or whatever it is that draws people to you, then you start asking your price. Hey, 45 million wasn't good enough. I need 50 million next year. And if they don't do it, somebody else will.
I see what you're saying. Does he, as an individual, warrant that paycheck? Yes, but the team and winning in the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl. You brought up CD Lamb combined. They paid between Dak and CD Lamb $376 million. You got to pay. You got others on the roster that you got to pay, and not necessarily at the high end. But if you're talking about building a winning team, how much are you going to have left to put those other pieces in place to win? Now, if it's basketball, cool. You don't need to pay 12 men a bunch of money to win a championship. But you brought up Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. The thing with them is they all have Super Bowls under their belts, and since Patrick Mahomes got paid, look at what he's done since he got that contract. And I think that, yes, he's going to keep performing well. But to me, this is not about him. This is, what do you have left to pay? On the flip side, you still have Michael Parsons. His contract is coming up. And so now I will say this. They look good Sunday. But, again, that was against the Cleveland Browns, and they're struggling too. So I think the money will – from a money perspective, you're right. You got to pay your quarterback. He's performed. But what Dallas is missing, you got to find those guys that are missing that gets them over the hump in the playoffs, those role players, those different positions. And I don't know if they have enough bread left to really pay those players that's going to get them over the hump. But I'm glad he got paid. I'm glad to see that, Dallas was willing to go ahead and get a deal done and not drag this out through the season to make it a distraction to them, or even in the off season. But my thing is, I'm not sure if they will have enough money to pay those players in those other roles that really is going to get them over the hump in the playoffs.
So here's the beauty of Dallas. Dallas drafts well, extremely well. They hit on a lot of their draft picks. I mean, they just drafted a young kid out of Oklahoma, Tyler Guyton. He looks the part. He should follow in the footsteps of Tyron Smith, who's with the Giants now, who's a mainstay at left tackle. They got another young guy on the other side, Tyler Smith, if I'm not mistaken. So they got some young pieces on the offensive line that they don't have to pay for a couple of years at marquee positions. They're not paying a running back. They got Zeke on a one-year deal, and another guy on a light contract. So they got some areas where, even if you look at the Cowboys from the last 20 years, they draft well and they develop their talent really well. So they're able to retain a lot of their talent, which is what you want to do. They re-signed DeMarcus Lawrence. They kept re-signing. Basically, the whole offensive line was intact for years. And those are all drafted guys. So, and then at that point, you can start restructuring deals, kind of moving some money around, deferring some money to guys and paying guys signing bonuses so their cap number is lighter. So they can do it. And, I will say this. If there's anybody who can do it, it's Jerry Jones. I think he understands with the brand, the Jerry world down there, which is crazy. Down there in Frisco, man, he literally got a work play. I mean, you can go watch practice. People just walk up, watch practice, you know what I'm saying? So, and then you got the Bill of America's team. So, technically, you really can't ever be in a rebuild. Technically, you know what I'm saying? And you shouldn't, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Cowboys, if you just looked at their roster from top to bottom, they're talented.
Yeah.
It's just, it's certain pieces. I do think the run game is going to suffer this year. I think without a true lead back with some juice, I think Zeke is kind of on the downside now. And they got another guy, Dowdell, if I'm not mistaken. They speak highly of him, but the numbers didn't show it from this past week with the Browns. And then, don't get me wrong, I mean, you're facing Myles Garrett, the reigning defensive player of the year, a monster off the edge. Not many people are blocking him. I don't care who you
Yeah.
are. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, for them to get the win, they really didn't lean on the run game like the Cowboys to be, the brand that they normally go out there and put on the field. But outside of that, I mean, the roster's always going to be talented. I mean, like I said, their talent evaluators hit on a lot of draft picks, and most teams can't say that. You know what I mean? From first down to undrafted free agents. Even if you look at their defense, they got some guys that, like, man, where he come from? Making plays, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what'll happen. I'm not, a Dallas fan. I'm just trying to figure out, I'd love to see how they pay the other players. And I think Dallas is going to be that team because of these contracts. And last week we talked about the private equity firms having an opportunity to infuse some instant cash into them. And when you look at the Cowboys' overall valuation, man, they're looking at possibly getting $1 billion infused into that franchise. That I think we're going to see that being one of the first teams to use that cash to really shore up some other positions. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And just as you said, if anybody's going to make that money work, it's going to be Jerry Jones. So I'd like to see how it happens. $231 million guaranteed. I mean, you really that's that's showing some serious love. They really care about you. But that contract kind of that pushes us into the second quarter topic of what I want to talk about. I noticed that across the league, you're seeing more and more black quarterbacks start for teams, and when I look at half the league has a black starting quarterback. When you talk about they're getting the big contracts, they're getting the coordinators to come in, and they're not just running quarterbacks, and they're leading the teams deep into the playoffs. Has that stigma now finally changed that black quarterbacks aren't the way to go?
I think so. I think it was kind of the success of some guys who really challenged some heavy hitters in the football world, and not even black quarterbacks. I mean, man, for all that Johnny Manziel did in the football world and college, man, Johnny Manziel played a hand in changing the game from the standpoint of how the quarterback position is supposed to look, quote unquote. He wasn't the ideal size, just a measurable standpoint. But when you're going out there and slicing up Nick Saban, when he was playing at Texas A&M, I mean, just bringing a different brand that, again, when you push the boundaries of some of the best minds, people have no other choice but to look at that. And you and I both know football is a copycat league. They tell you that.
Yeah.
If Kevin Smith running something some kind of way, best believe we're going to take a look at it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so from that, and then going way back to when the game started, football on every level is about waves. Some waves are bigger and last forever. Some waves are small, like the Wildcat. People ate that up. They figured out, hey, we keep a certain tempo. We pass the ball. I don't know if the Wildcat is worth our time mixing in, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of faded. In certain positions, people run it, but it didn't have any lasting staying power. So I think, with, you guys like Lamar Jackson, your Michael Vicks, I'm going to take you back even to our conference, Woody Dantzler. The names that sometimes people overlook. But, man, if we going to talk black quarterbacks and success, man, you got to put guys like Woody Dantzler in there because, I mean, we hadn't seen a guy with running back stature that could throw the ball. We didn't know how to defend that. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
You have no other choice but take notice. You know what I mean? And so I think, like I said, the wave kind of hit at the right time. There's always been black quarterbacks, and we kind of just stepped into that role. And then we have, like I said, when I spoke to Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson's, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, Caleb Williams. As a player, as long as you got somebody to look to, say, okay, he doing it, that kind of gives you a lane. All right, I see it's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so I give you the flip side of that. Part of the reason why you don't see any black kickers from a youth age, because it ain't none.
Yeah.
like that's not something that we can look at and say that it's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nah, if you want to look back in time, you know, your Reggie Robies, you know, some different guys here and there, but man, them kids don't know nothing about them days. So, but to your point, man, I think even if you look at rivals, man, I mean, a lot of if you look going to like 2027, a lot of them kids are black kids, you know, and pro style quarterbacks, you know what I mean, a wide open system. So I think the need is there, the want is there, and then I think on our end, I think we're being able to be mentored by some passing minds that can give a strong foundation, specifically into how to read defenses and dissect defenses, and that was carry you to success, outside of just running around. You know what I mean? Because that's only gonna last so long. You can ask a number of different guys like, how long is that running around gonna last you? It's only a matter of time for somebody to catch you and that one shot can end that running. You know what I mean? So, even like the number one quarterback coming out this year is a kid from Bellevue, Michigan. The class of 2026 number one quarterback in the whole nation is a guy by the name of Julian Lewis. Not too far from my hometown. He just carved my high school up 63-0, bro. He went like 12. He went 12 for like 16, 6 touchdowns. And he got like a half of work, bro. Committed to USC. Bunch of names, man. So I think the future is bright. And even in you know, race is a hot topic, but I think it's even bled over into all quarterbacks having some type of mobility. We're not talking about, you know, having to run. You know what I mean? We're talking about being able to manipulate the pocket a little bit, create some time, that type of thing, and be able to manipulate defenses, man. So I think it's been a good thing. I think the influence has helped the game in general. You know what I mean?
Matt, to your point, the quarterback, I think that there were two quarterbacks that really made other teams comfortable bringing in black quarterbacks and really tore down that stigma were Russell Wilson and Cam Newton. I think Russell Wilson, you know, winning the Super Bowl and positioning that team consistently to win, I think that helped. And to many teams considered undersized when you compare him to what is the standard size in the NFL. And so it was a little bit different because, you know, what Doug Williams did, he won a Super Bowl, but you didn't see that consistent winning as a part of his pedigree once he got into the league. He struggled with Tampa Bay, and he had that season with Washington, but you just didn't see the follow-up. But with Russell Wilson coming in, he was able to stay in that same system, have consecutive productive years, win that Super Bowl. Even when, you know, he threw that interception against the Patriots, he was still in a good position. That was a Super Bowl. Again, he was there again. But I also think Cam Newton, what he did during that same time was show that, you know, he's going to run. He still has that power, that physical dominance over, you know, some other defensive players. But at the same time, he was winning too and changed the game a little bit where it wasn't just the Michael Vick type. So I think those two quarterbacks at the same time really, they may not have opened the doors, but I think that they answered that question about being able to read defenses, pass the ball, still run. Like Cam could run. He could just flat out be a runner when he wanted to. But Russell Wilson also showed, hey, I can manipulate the pocket and really move around and change and escape when I had to, but also sit back there and throw it. So, you know, I'm glad to see it. It is where it is. I think for me, it's great to see that not only are just the elite of the elite black quarterbacks getting it, but even, you know, we're seeing black quarterbacks not perform well and still getting a shot, like Deshaun Watson. He got the big contract. He got a chance after chance with some of his off-the-field issues, and they didn't just immediately throw him away. But you're just seeing it across the board where black quarterbacks are leading teams and showing that consistency, just like any other quarterback, just like any white quarterback. And they're showing that, you know, you got to put pieces around them as well. And so it's good to see that that stigma is going away, because of the consistent play. I mean, look at Dak. We just talked about him, and what he's doing to me is really showing that, hey, give him the big contract, but just like white quarterbacks, put the pieces around them and they'll perform well and get your team over the hump. So it's good to see it, man. I came across that information about half the teams in the league having a black starting quarterback. Many are winning the quarterback battles. Down in Atlanta, you're seeing, Cousins not perform, and people saying, hey, we want to see, what is his name, Pace?
Michael Penix.
So you're seeing Penix now, he's getting a push from fans. They want to see him, not just because they want to see him run around, but they want production. They want to win. And ultimately, once you start making that your main priority, you're going to see more and more black quarterbacks get a chance. But to your other point, more and more black quarterbacks are going to college programs where they can grow and develop and really be coached in that pro style of offense and ensuring that consistency in that winning. So it's great to see it. It's great to see the league showing it. Lamar Jackson winning, MVP awards, and Patrick Mahomes. I just think that it's going to be hard to knock him off. But again, it's great to see that battle where they're getting legit opportunities to not just do well, but also to not do well. Because I don't see Deshaun really being there. I think they're trying to figure out a way out of that contract right now. They're meeting with attorneys to figure out how do we get out of this contract and get this dude out of here. And so we're finally at a point where I feel that, we can be mediocre and still get a shot in terms of black quarterbacks, because we've seen it from the beginning with white quarterbacks. And so I think ultimately now teams are at a point where they're saying, hey, we just want to win. And we're also at a phase where look at what Shador's doing in Colorado, even though they're not winning, but people are talking about him being a top 10 pick. So we may have, two of the top three quarterbacks taken off the board potentially could be black. So again, we're seeing that shift because we're seeing more black quarterbacks infused early on before they get to the league in these passing offenses, pro-style offenses, learning how to read not just basic defenses in cover two, but also reading these exotic blitzes. So it's good to see it, man, really see it progress to this point. And where it goes from here, I'm just not sure. But when you talk about half the league, that says a lot compared to what it was when we played and even before, where if you were a kid, growing up as a black quarterback, you had Doug Williams for a long time, or you had Randall Cunningham for a long time. And then with Michael Vick, his talent was at such a high level, particularly with the way he ran. You had a lot of quarterbacks, they're not going to run like that. And so that's why I think with the Russell Wilson came along, he really created that mold for that passing type quarterback to really be accepted. And I think that is due to his consistency and winning and staying there and not just being, subject to running the ball all the time.
I definitely agree, man. I think the beauty of it is from an NFL standpoint, they finally kind of broaden their vision on talent, because it's talent. It's about acquiring talent. How can you, whether you scouting it, whether you getting it in free agency, and they scour the globe for talent. Trust, they going to Europe. They got eyes everywhere looking for talent, cheap talent, particularly. But I think from a schematic standpoint, defenses realize like the quarterback is the one position that we don't have a body for, and for all these years coming up until they got okay with running quarterbacks, you didn't have to worry about the quarterback running. Like when I got in the NFL, they dropped back to 7. They were 7 yards deep. You know what I'm saying? Off the play action, standing right there. You knew every single time they're gonna be standing right there. The idea of their running was slim to none. One of the few running quarterbacks was actually in my league, and that was Jeff Garcia. He was undersized. He necessarily run. He scrambled, and he'd move around the pocket. He could go get a first down. But still, there just wasn't that many. But I think the beauty of it that's kind of been dope to see is the different guys come. Like you mentioned, Cam. They saw, man, we never seen a brute force like this. Cam Newton, my side, bro. I've known
Yeah.
Cam since he was 15, been in this space. I'm not gonna call him a great friend or anything, but I'm familiar with him. You know what I mean? He is a big individual. And so even as another big individual, I'm not trying to tackle him in the open field for real. I'm not. I'm be real with you. I'm not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they saw that. He spoke to Russell Wilson. Russell did it a little different. Russell could move, but he was great in creating time, moving around, manipulating the defense. And I think Russell, just from a mental standpoint, going back to his NC State, Wisconsin days, man, seeing him be able to, you can just see the mental process he was able to go through was a little different than we've seen. So I think it's just been cool on both sides, man. I think, from our side, black quarterbacks, like I spoke to, even the white quarterbacks being, I mean, you got these, Brady Mayfield can move around a little bit. These guys, I'm not going to, Matthew Stafford, 36, and he can do enough to get himself out of tough spaces, and I think that's cool to see that, to be acknowledged for one, and to be accepted too. You know what I mean? Whereas I don't think
Yeah.
that's always been the space. So, and then, like I said, the football, NFL, like, hey, we want that. You look at Jaden Daniels, he can move. Even Drake May can move,
Yeah.
6'5", I think they said that he's a 4'5" guy. You know what I'm saying? So I think with the athletes being better, the NFL being more accepting, and then, the other side of the talent pool saying, hey, all right, cool, that's what we got. And it kind of just coming together, man. So I just think, long story short, man, just making for a more exciting product, and you kind of seeing everybody being able to display something versus like one position, like, oh no, I just drop back and throw. That's all I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Pace, let's kick off to the third quarter. In the NFL and in college, you're always going to have teams that maybe they don't play to the preseason rankings, or they just have a letdown. And so when I look at week 2, my letdown for week 2, we're going to call this segment the letdown. My letdown, man, is going to be Colorado. And I understand some people didn't have them picked high to win a lot of games. But when I look at some of the things Deion was doing, the way he went into the portal, and just his overall narrative around this year's team, I understand they're in a pretty decent conference down there with the Big 12. I still was hoping for a better performance than I've seen the first 2 weeks. Yeah, they won. They're 1-1. All hope is not lost. But the disappointment for me is just up front, offensive line, defensive line. In the first 2 games, they have a combined 2 total sacks. I was expecting more. You're bringing in Warren Sapp, one of the best to ever do it, Hall of Famer, and you only get 2 sacks in the first 2 weeks. The offensive line is not getting a push. I don't think they've had a 100-yard rusher yet, and it has gotten to the point where you're putting your quarterback, who's going to be potentially a top 10 pick, if not, some are saying a top pick, you're literally putting him in physical danger in this game. And so, to me, it's a letdown. I was expecting them to come out and even play better. Even if you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. We get it. We played the game. But to not perform at a better level, to statistically, I think in the first game against San Diego State, they had 19 yards rushing. You're not going to beat anybody with 19 yards rushing. So, for me, that's my letdown. I just expected them to put up a better fight, especially against Nebraska. Again, nothing against North Dakota State, their first opponent. But to statistically not be able to do those things that you and I know that you have to do consistently to win, to put your team in a good position, to be able to pass the rusher, to rush the passer, to be able to protect your quarterback at some level, and be able to at least maybe not dominate the run game with 200 yards a game, but at least establish enough of the run to where other teams aren't able to put together blitz packages and put your quarterback under constant pressure. And early on, some people thought, well, it's Shador. It's the way he plays. Well, when he went away towards it with the last 2 or 3 minutes of the fourth quarter against Nebraska, they brought in this freshman quarterback from California. He was under pressure. He couldn't get the ball off. So they've got some problems, and they've got problems in places that are critical to every team and their long-term success. And that's the offense and defensive line, and that's just not something you can fix overnight. So, and it's not technique either. And because when you've got Warren Sapp coaching your defensive line, you're getting the best insight that a defensive lineman can get in terms of what to do. It's just, I was really hoping that, the portal would have been a lot better for him. And I don't see the players really developing and getting better week to week. So that's my letdown up to this point in the season is the Colorado Buffaloes. What's your letdown?
I just want to say this about Colorado before I get to mine, because it's a letdown, huge letdown. But, I think you spoke to Warren Sapp, and I think Warren Sapp and Deion and any other professional athlete that doesn't have any coaching background, I think that's kind of part of the problem, though. You know what I mean? From the standpoint of, man, a coach can come from all different walks of life. Some coaches never even played football and are great coaches because they can make the information likable and learnable. They can give you drills that mimic those things to get you to be the player that they want you to be, and they can give you insight, whether it's opponent insight, whether it's personal insight, whether it's the schematics in terms of how the defense works. They can put all that together in a 30 to hour long meeting and teach you however they need to teach you. And I don't necessarily know how much coaching experience Warren Sapp has. Now, if we talking about Hall of Fame players, there's only so many of those people that God ever made. That's different. But that don't necessarily speak to being a great coach. Same thing for Deion. I think motivator, fan favorite, front man to be able to talk, all that is great, but can you put a game plan together? Can you stop the bleeding here? Can you manage the clock here? Can you make the right decision in situational football? That's different. You know what I mean? So I think they're kind of falling victim to some of those things to where I don't think their foundation is great. I'd be interested to see their practice and see how they do the individual drills. And see how we if we're offensive line, we in the shoots every day, and then we move on from there. Or defensive lineman, I don't know if that's in place because Warren Sapp, again, this is his first year coaching and his first job is at major college football, and we're not talking about he ain't in the Sun Belt. No disrespect to the Sun Belt, he not in the MEAC. No disrespect to the MEAC. You in the Big 12. It's many teams ranked in the Big 12. Got some good football.
Yeah.
Them people coming downhill, they're not playing with you. Yeah. They're not. Hey man, Matt Rule in Nebraska didn't call timeout. Make sure y'all knew how to get aligned and everything. No, we ain't got time for that. Y'all figure that out next week. So, I think it's two things again. I think coaching plays something into it, and then the second part about it too. I don't know if Deion's plan was, I think it was a plan of hey, I'm gonna build this great house, but you built it on shaky land that was like, hey man, let's just say we got an erosion problem over here, or whatever, it's a flood zone. You didn't look at everything that's gonna take for this house to be able to be sturdy and stand the test of time. So I think we're seeing some of that. And then the last part about it, man, I don't know if whoever's picking their portal people has the proper eye for talent. I really don't. Because for you to have some of those names on that portal outside of, I'm speaking specifically offensive line, outside of number one draft, the number one high school tackle, he's actually playing pretty solid. We have Florida State, Houston, Indiana, and they don't look like it. They don't look like it at all. Wherever they came from, man, I'm talking about they getting ran through.
Yeah.
It's Nebraska, when you watch the game, your quarterback not supposed to get touched the first series. I don't care. He's not supposed to get touched. He is not supposed to get touched the first series. And it was early and often. So to wrap that up, man, I don't know. You could fix a small leak in a boat. You can if we close to shore, it's a pretty sturdy boat. We got a little water coming in, we good. But man, if you out there in a rickety old wooden canoe with a big hole in it, man, it's only a matter of time, bro.
Yeah, and that big hole is up front on
Yeah.
both sides of the ball. So who's your letdown?
Man, I hate to say it, man, because I'm still a fan. Football, strictly football. Deshaun Watson, man. Deshaun Watson versus the Dallas Cowboys he looked like he had never played football before, bro. And he was, and from a standpoint of, he just looked, if you watch a quarterback and you can watch them from the time they snap the ball, or you can watch it from the time they're actually getting the play out from the huddle. Are they looking at the defense and seeing coverage? I think sometimes you can look at body language, see, he gets it versus, I don't know, he look a little shaky. And for whatever reason, for 3 hours, Deshaun Watson looked really shaky playing football. And this is coming from a guy who is the all-time passing leader in the state of Georgia. Phenomenal. He's always been a good quarterback. He took Clemson to new heights that they had never seen. You know what I'm saying? You got to think, Deshaun Watson lost to Nick Saban, came back and beat him. That don't happen. That does not happen. You know what I mean? Hit the NFL with. I mean, he basically was C.J. Stroud. I mean, he hit the NFL running.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. People know about his transgressions. That's a touchy situation that it's unfortunate for the parties involved. But and again, he had a shoulder injury last year, and I don't know if maybe that injury to your throwing shoulder was more serious than they let on and whatnot. But it was bad, man. He was 0 for 10 and throws of 20 more yards, missed wide open wide receivers, and even he missed a big portion of last year with injury. But even when he played, I mean, he was just throwing the ball up, man, throwing it in triple coverage, interception after interception. And the crazy part about saying all of that, the Browns picked up Joe Flacco at the end of last year. He guided them to the playoffs. I think he was 4-1 the last 5 games. He had the same numbers Deshaun Watson had, and Deshaun Watson starting like 8 games. This is a guy who had no knowledge of the offense, came in, were able to get them going. Mind you, he's got weapons. You got Amari Cooper. They just traded for Jerry Jeudy. They got Elijah Moore in the slot. They just paid David Njoku at tight end. The offensive line's solid. Nick Chubb is hurt. When he's healthy, he's a top 5 running back. I mean, it's not that you don't have any weapons. It's just, I think bro forgot how to play quarterback, man. I really do, and it's crazy to see. It was like borderline sad to watch because at one point he just kind of was just out there, just how a quarterback throws something, you like, why would you throw that?
Yeah.
Why would you throw that, bro?
Yeah.
And that typically don't happen to somebody who's had the amount of success that he's had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if you've had some of the legal things that he's went through, and I gotta imagine you're hearing about that even in your home stadium every time you go to work. I gotta imagine somebody got something to say to you about it. Let alone on the road. I'm sure on the road people saying some unimaginable things to the young man. But typically, when you get between the white lines, you don't hear that anymore. You know what I mean? That's not a thing because you're out there with your brothers and. For people who are watching, when you play football, you really don't hear anything. The crazy thing, you don't hear anything until you hit somebody. Everything is just kind of like nothing really, like you in space. And you see people, you hear what you got to hear. You hear the call, and at that point, everything go mute. You know what I'm saying? Until you hit somebody. Yeah. But yeah, man, it was crazy to watch, man. And I don't know, man. Will he ever regain his form? It's trending towards no. I actually read a story where a TV personality, Dan Lebertar, was questioning whether or not the Cleveland Browns are the ones who leaked his latest sexual assault litigation or whatever is about to go on. He's being sued for that. So
yeah, it's a civil case this time with this one. Yeah,
and Smitty, that's the thing, man. Teams will leak the stuff. Teams, you wonder how some information gets out, and a lot of times it is a team, somebody within the organization. I'm not saying it's the owner or anything, but people get information out there, man. So what's the easiest way? I'm sure they got something in the clause that says, hey, another thing come up, Gotta let you go.
Yeah, they sound like they're trying to get him out of there, and after what Flacco going 4-1, picking up the same offense, they didn't have to bring in a special coordinator, they didn't have to run a special package, and to many people, if you go back and look at the game of when Flacco played versus when Deshaun was playing, it looks like two totally different offenses, but it's really not. And I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe his focus just isn't there. And I think it might be one of those situations where maybe he needs to step back again. But they're going to find a way to get him up out of there and out of that contract. And it may be a point to where now the baggage is not worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze with what he may try to command out on the free agent market because he has no leverage at this point.
Which,
So,
Smith, it was like we've talked about off air. When your quarterback position isn't stable or isn't producing, every other contract on that roster is wasted. It's
wow.
Because what good is Amari Cooper if I don't got anybody to get him the ball? What good is anybody on that offense from a skill position where I can't get them the ball in their most productive space? Slant, goal route, bang eight. Post.
Yeah.
If I can't get you the ball and what you do best, man, my whole roster's wasted. My whole roster is wasted, it's trash.
And most quarterbacks have a coordinator that they favor. So when you bring in and you're investing in a quarterback to not just be the face of your franchise, but you're bringing other pieces around him to make sure that he's going to be as productive as possible. Again, so for them to be able to bring Flacco in, not have to bring in a new coordinator, it just really put more pressure on Deshaun. So he may not have a space at all where he can just, take a breath. Because on the field, you're worried about your backup coming at you. Off the field, you got all types of problems. It looks like the organization may not have your back with your off the field issues. So he's in a really tough spot, man. To really try to focus on being the best that he can be.
So the thing with Deshaun is crazy. Is like you got a fully guaranteed contract, and for all intents and purposes, man, you got him by the balls. I mean, it's what you want as a player, but again, we're not talking about some shot in the wind guy. Like, if you had said you was gonna give that type of money to an unproven young guy, I'd be like, no way. But I liked it. I was like, cool. The flip of what happened with that trade to Houston got a haul back in all of them guys, starting with CJ Stroud down to the last guy that they were able to get out of them draft picks have all contributed. They're all really good players. So Houston won that trade. They were able to get their books clean, their image clean. They were able to start over with a younger quarterback who's playing better and he's cheaper, right? And on top of all of that, you finally found a coach, you got a new GM. Like Houston essentially trading Deshaun Watson revitalized their franchise and turned it into a winner. And don't get me wrong, Deshaun was having success. He was having success. But, I mean, like I said, you've cleaned your image up. We're not even talking about that no more in Houston. We on to C.J. Stroud is loved by everyone. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you, it ain't nobody in the 100-mile Houston area that's got a bad thing to say about C.J. Stroud. You know what I'm saying? This is a kid in his second year in the NFL. So, when you talk about trades, people who win trades, people who don't win, the same thing with Carolina and the Bears.
Man, I don't even want to hear about them damn Panthers, man. I don't even want to hear that crap, man. Come on, man. Don't do me like that, Pace. Don't.
The bad thing is teams will pimp themselves trying to get rid of whether it's baggage or trying to finally hit that one player that you think is going to change your franchise. One player isn't going to change your franchise, especially if you got a bad coach, especially if his GM can't acquire talent properly. So, but then you look at the flip of it is, man, like sometimes you just don't have a choice. There isn't no free agent quarterback. Patrick Mahomes ain't ever going to be a free agent until he gets so old and he just trash. For real.
Yeah,
Patrick Mahomes is never
yeah,
not gonna play for the Chiefs unless he just gets to the point. He'll have to be like Russell Wilson at this point in his career. Like, all right, bro, it's
yeah.
time, bro.
And he's
You know
got
what
a
I'm saying?
long time to even get to that point.
And even with Russell Wilson, he could still, if he just wanted to, if he wanted to tell him like, I'm okay with not starting. He can go hold a clipboard for another 5 years. Nobody's gonna
You're
tell him
right.
no. With his
You're
knowledge, nobody's
right.
gonna tell him no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Paige, let's jump into the fourth quarter here on some off the field things going on with the NFL. We saw everyone now at this point has seen what happened to Tyreek Hill. I went back today and I saw the footage from the body cam of the officers, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. And so for me, instead of going into were the cops right, were the cops wrong, I want to get your take on, as a professional athlete in New York, you're talking about high profile, a well known franchise in a city where there have been some issues with law enforcement, police brutality, some other things, unnecessary stops, things like that. What is that relationship typically like when it comes to law enforcement and their relationship with professional athletes, particularly black professional athletes?
Me personally, I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem. I mean, I'll give you my background. I'm a son of a cop, and you know, my dad's never really had to talk to me about handling things with police. I've never really been in any legal matters where it was a chance to go to jail of any investigation of that sort. But he just kind of always like, look, man, authority is authority, and sometimes you're gonna have to hear things that you don't want to hear. But the best thing to do is handle it from a respectful space. Let the person say what they got to say, and yes sir, no sir, go about your business. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I ain't gonna lie. Like even when I played in New York, I was driving around in nice foreign cars, and I got stopped at least once a year. At least once a year. And I lived in a
Mm-hmm.
predominantly white area, but every time the cop would come to the car, you know what I'm saying, I would be respectful, have all my information ready, and literally, Smitty, every time they would come to the car, they look at me and they just start talking football, man. I
Yeah.
I had one instance, man. I had a '96 Impala, one everybody wanted down south, right? I had that, and I was going to work one morning. I had some rims on it, and I got pulled over probably about two exits past my exit. Cop pulled me over. He was as soon as he was license registration, he like put his arms on the window. We was about to play the Saints that weekend. I'll never forget. And he was like, "Man, what we gonna do against this week against Breeze, man? We gonna win?" I was like, "Yeah, man, we good, bro. We good." And you start talking football, man. And don't get me, I'm making light of the situation. Um, but that being said, the Tyreek thing is crazy because you got to know who that is as a police officer. You got to have an
Yeah.
idea. It's game day. It's a luxury car, sports car by the stadium. Um, and two, man, like the team and the police have a relationship. The security officer, the head of team security, more times than not, used to be a high level police officer. There's police typically around, especially when you game day, when you're traveling away. They're escorting. People like we talk to them. Like it's not like it's not like they're like they're guarding us or they're uh, in a treating us like we're prisoners or something. Like no, we interact with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, man, and you hear this, and it's two sides of the story. You hear one side that's like there's bad apples in everything you can think of, race, religion, jobs, politics, everywhere. There's a bad apple. Cool, I understand that. The flip of that is like, man, I'm not gonna call Tyreek Hill a pillar of the community, but this is a guy who, if nothing else, is bringing he's bringing dollars to the area. His name is known. I've seen Tyreek Hill work with kids. I've seen him at camps. I mean, it's. I think, man, if you just the cop use some empathy in that space, and if nothing else, man. Again, like I said, I'm a son of a cop, so I understand. Like, you have to police your area people, and a lot of people ask me what type of day you had. That guy, police officer might have lost his mom and his dad in the last month. He might be going through a divorce. Who knows, man? Life happens to everybody. But that being said, you would just think, you would hope that the guy would just use some restraint and just better professionalism. I mean, especially when you see his teammates coming to his aid and his rescue in a respectful manner, like just checking on him. You got to think, like, maybe, again, I get Tyreek was a little animated, but you're on the way to the game. That just typically does not happen, man. It doesn't happen. I've never been in a space where I almost got stopped going to a game. Never. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't driving in no $300,000 Lotus either. You know what I'm saying? And the crazy part about it is, they wrote this man a ticket on saying that he was visually going 60 miles an hour in a 40. He didn't even have him on a radar gun. So it just sounded like to me, man, you had a rogue guy who, was gung-ho, man. But, the flip of it is for people like us, man, it's like Tyreek Hill said, what if I wasn't Tyreek Hill? What was you going to do to me?
Yeah, I think that for me, it was when I watched the body cam footage, what really got to me was when the officer pulled him over. When he got him over, he got out the car, and the first thing Tyreek Hill said was, and he kept repeating it over and over, "Don't bang on my window like that. Don't knock on my window like that." And to me, that started it. Yeah. Like, you're telling this officer who's coming to give you a speeding ticket. He done told you when he pulled up next to you, before he pulled you over, he said, "I got you for speeding." So if it's a speeding ticket, you Tyreek Hill, you got the money, send your attorney up there to go ahead and get it dismissed.
His agent was in the car. That's the crazy part about it.
So you're telling an officer, don't bang on your window like that, when he just walk up to you. Everybody knows when the officer pull you over, let your window down, because they trying to get home just like you are.
Have your information ready.
And that officer, once he,
I'm like, "Hey, was I speeding? I'm sorry, man. My bad."
Just let it go. Just say you late.
Apologetic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he got you, because in that situation, whether you Tyreek Hill or not, when I got pulled over, registration was out of date about 2 days, but still I got pulled over. First thing I did was let all the windows down in the car. And to me, at that point, you got to understand they trying to get home. And I remember when we were in college, and I don't know if you remember, we went to the Aloha Bowl. Before we went to go eat, before we went to really go check in, the first people we sat down with was the police chief in that room, who was giving us a heads up on what to do and what not to do. I don't know if you remember this. Every training camp, one of the two people that were guaranteed to come talk to the team was campus police and the local police. So to me, when you get pulled over, you're going to the game, okay? And I get it, you might be running behind, but just go ahead, let the dude write the ticket. But when you start off the conversation by saying, "Don't bang on my window like that," come on, man. And I'm not saying that warranted the handcuffs and to be thrown to the ground or to call backup with 4 other officers. I'm not saying it warranted that. I'm just saying, when you start off that way, telling an officer who's trying to give you a speeding, he done told you what he's getting you for. He told you he's getting you for speeding. That's the thing. Yeah, you're not going.
Once you flex your muscle, you're not going to outflex.
You're not, man. You're not.
And here's the thing. I mean, I think everybody who's played football, hopefully, if you've had some success, it's a different adrenaline that it gives you. It's a different feeling that it gives you, especially if you're the man.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure Tyree was feeling himself a little bit, but I think in hindsight, and maybe he do, maybe he don't. Maybe he approaches that situation differently. He gets a ticket. Maybe the guy. A lot of times, man, if you just talk to these guys, man, with some respect, man, just on some
that's it.
My bad, man. I'm sorry. He'll ask because they're gonna run your background anyway.
Yeah.
So they're gonna see, this Tyreek Hill. A lot of times they gonna, man, you running late, man. Look, man, don't worry about it, man. Look, just slow down next time. I'll let you through with Warren on trip, man. Hey, good
But
game.
but
Hey, good game, man. Have a good game.
but when you start off by saying don't bang on my window like that, come on.
No,
So
no.
so Pace, let's jump into the stat of the week. The stat of the week, man. My stat of the week, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. My stat of the week is 51. 51. 51 is the number of players that Jerry Jones is going to have to figure out how to pay to make sure that Dak and the Cowboys get to the next level. And that's after already spending. That's because he spent $376 million on 2 players. So now you got to figure out what you're going to do with the other 51. Now, I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying that number is the magic number for the Cowboys. Again, you got Michael Parsons coming up. You got your head coach that's you're going to have to pay. So, that 51, that's the number of players left on that roster that they're going to have to sit down and figure out how they're going to pay. Yeah, they got some young guys on contract. But like I know, with those young guys having that production, particularly on that offensive line, who's to say that none of them won't now come back after an extension? Knowing 2 things. One, you done paid Dak, you done paid Lamb that money. Well, cool. And knowing that you about to get close to $1 billion infused from private equity. Okay. Now you really got to spend this off season and trying to figure that out. So my stat of the week for the OT conversation is 51.
All right. I got one that's pretty ridiculous, man. It's absurd, actually. Daniel Jones, the quarterback for the New York Giants, young man from the University of Duke. I think he's a Charlotte native. He got I think it's 4 year, $160 million contract extension last year.
Wow.
Since signing the contract, he's thrown 2 passing touchdowns and also thrown 3 pick sixes through that time. Man, this is a guy that the Giants gave up on Saquon Barkley for. This is a guy who they thought was going to be the next Eli Manning. He actually even got an endorsement from David Cutcliffe and the Manning family because of the connection with Cutcliffe and Manning, the Mannings. When I tell you this guy needs a change of scenery with probably more than anybody in the last 20 years. I think the New York media, I think the New York fan base, I think the injuries, the ineptitude on the offensive line. The Giants' offensive line gave up 85 sacks last year. not just the starting 5. I'm talking about everybody who played gave up a combined 85 sacks. 85s, man. So I just think he's a shell shock player, man. He honestly, man, he would be somebody who'd be perfect in a smaller market like a Carolina, Jacksonville. I'm gonna give you another one, man. I don't know if I'm supposed to do 2 or not, but it's a young man named Alvin Henderson, if I'm not mistaken. He's either Alvin or Emmanuel from Alabama. He's committed to the University of Auburn. This dude ran for 345 yards in a high school game and scored 10 touchdowns. 345 yards. He scored 10 touchdowns in a high school football game, man.
Dog. Who are they playing? What school of the blind were they playing?
Man, I just know if I was a high school coach, there'd be some guys. I'm like, man, look, just don't. Man, focus on your schoolwork, son. We need some firemen. We need some pillars of the community. But we don't need your services no more. We just it's not beneficial for either side.
It's man. When I look at the Giants, I think they set him up for failure. And the reason why I'm saying that is, who do they have around him? Again, we talk all the other great quarterbacks we talked about that are doing well, whether they're Shroud down in Houston, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, even Josh Allen. You got to have talent around him. And if I ask you, who's another star on that Giants offense?
Star, no. They just drafted a young receiver who could be a star with a good quarterback,
but he's a rookie.
You know what the Giants' problem is? The Giants, the Steelers, those two, because they're not winning. And Carolina.
No,
They
wait a
waited.
minute. Wait a minute. Now those are three totally different.
But I'm just gonna pinpoint out to you what I think their struggle is. They waited too long to pivot the franchise and what the franchise is known for. Carolinas keep
True.
pounding. The Giants and the Steelers have always been strong run game people. The Steelers are still trying to do that. The Giants tried it with drafting Saquon overall second. And my point in saying all of that is this is a quarterback driven league. And so when you're trying to focus and hammer home this one point that they're still doing it, but they're doing it in secondary. They're not starting the game out with 3 runs. They're not drafting high draft pick players. Look, man, young man from Jordan Mason last night for San Francisco, an undrafted rookie from Georgia Tech, gave us 140 some yards last night, bro. He didn't even know he was gonna play till Friday. But you
Yeah.
know what? You got a good scheme. You got some good players in front of you. You can get anybody to play. Excuse me. You can't get anybody. What I want to say is there's plenty of running back talent across the world, specifically in America, to where you can find late round gems, and you don't have to invest high dollar money and high draft picks on running backs. And so, if you look at the Giants, it's been offensive line, running back. It's been positions that, to me, they have value, but from what they're trying to do and what the talent base is saying, like, no, man. Everybody's trying to score points. Everybody's trying to find that guy at quarterback. And you invested in a guy who showed you he wasn't that guy. He showed you I'm not the guy. Give it to somebody else. I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you gave it to
Yeah.
him anyway. So I
Yeah.
think, man, it's they need somebody who's a visionary who can get them to where the game is now. Because we've spoken about it before. The better talent you can pick, Cowboys, like I just said, Green Bay drafts well, uh, Baltimore always drafts well. These teams is always in the mix, right? They can identify talent, and it's cheap young talent. So that way, I can go pay Micah Parsons. You know why? Because I don't got to pay a left tackle for 4 more years. I can go
Yeah.
pay CeeDee Lamb. You know why? Because I ain't got to go pay. I ain't got to pay Micah Parsons. He's still on his rookie deal. You know what I'm saying? Micah
Yeah.
Parsons gonna get $30-40 million a year at that time, but for 5 years, he's cheap. Even what he
Yeah.
making now, Micah Parsons probably making 8-9 million. He's cheap.
But
Consider what he's supposed to be making.
but here's the difference. Here's the difference with the Steelers. They still made the playoffs last year.
You know what though? It's
They
honestly
still, but
detrimental to their team and their franchise. They should have gone through the because here's the thing: the Steelers don't want to spend. You've never seen the Steelers really spend a lot of money in free agency. They're homegrown. They're gonna
and that,
develop
that's
talent
and
and
that's true. But look at what they got to replace, though. You got to replace. You
to
losing.
to me to me, I think sometimes losing. I ain't saying go out there and get your ass. I'm not saying 0-16 Lions losing. I'm just saying maybe not going to the playoffs and understanding like, hey, let's sit so and so down.
They
People
can't.
do it.
But see, if they do that, Tomlin's gone. They
You
do
got to
that, Tomlin's
sacrifice
gone.
somebody.
But
If
see,
they don't go to the playoffs this year, which I think even if they barely do, it's still time, man.
I mean, but my only thing is they lost so much all at one time.
Smitty, they
Big
kicked
Ben
six
left.
field goals Sunday, and they look like man, they look like some old cats playing flag football, like me and you getting the game together with the fellas.
But see, when you lose Pouncey on that O line,
Oh
you lose
yeah,
Ben at
no,
quarterback. You
man,
still so it's so much that left within a three. Think about a 3-year span with the Steelers. Everybody left, and then you in a division with Baltimore, with a team like Cincinnati that has had their, they've had some success.
Smitty, you just answered your own point though. Here's the thing: you can't keep a car forever, right? If you go look at your
I mean,
Kelly Blue
that's
Book
true.
brother, you know what I'm saying? You can keep, hey man, still running good, but you just losing value, and things are getting more expensive on the outside. So here's the thing: your good teams find a way to get to a certain number with a guy and say, look, man, we love him as a player, we love what he's done, but we got to move on to something else. Why? Because it's cheaper, and we got to allocate money other places. Even if you forecasting what's coming out in the next couple of years. Even speaking of Jerry Jones, you look at the quarterback market in the next couple of years, it ain't worth him taking a chance on somebody young. Let me go ahead and pay this dude I already know what I can do with, right?
Yeah.
If you smart, you doing that. You're not looking at it like, all right, man, I'm gonna put it all on Shador. You still got to get Shador. You don't
I
know how
mean,
that
that's
draft
true.
goes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's true.
so I think with teams, man, like I said, if you look at Green Bay said, man, we got Brett Favre, but we ain't gonna have him forever. Go and draft Aaron Rodgers. He fell right in our lap. He wasn't supposed to drop this
Yeah.
far. We good everywhere else.
Yeah.
Get a quarterback. What about playing him? We don't. Brett Favre still good. What better person to learn from than Brett Favre? Same thing they did with Jordan Love, right?
Yeah.
That make all the sense in the world. And you know why? You know why it make the most sense? Because you've never had a quarterback issue from Brett Favre till now. You ain't never in your lifetime seen the Green Bay Packers with a quarterback issue, ever.
Yeah, when it comes to the Steelers, man, I want to be real protective of Tomlin, man, and the reason being is he's one of those coaches again. The man has never had a losing season in the league, and unfortunately,
So
people are
what have you
still
done for me lately, league though?
but again, what have you done? What has he done lately? Took a trash team the past 3 years that has lost so much and still got them in the playoffs in a division and a conference with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, the Cincinnati Bengals, and has still gotten into the playoffs with that tough schedule. That's what he's done lately, and meanwhile losing pieces. But I think the core of the Steelers, and then I let it go because I don't want to spend the whole time dogging out my Steelers, but I think they're getting back to what makes them special because they've got some young guys on that defense that are coming along, that are developing. So you've lost Dick LeBeau, you've lost Pouncey, you've lost Roethlisberger, and your running back situation still hasn't gotten fixed. So I think he's done his best coaching job has been the past 4 years just because of what he's had to do with what he's got. And in that conference, man, it's just tough to really make it through that playoff when you talk about the juggernauts of teams and on that schedule. I mean, they still play Baltimore strong. They still play Cincinnati strong.
They do, but part of that is the culture. Part of that is
Yeah,
going way
yeah,
back. Like it's certain places you can go on every level. Dion even shouted out North Dakota State. He was showing some
yeah,
plays of their game after the game in the team meeting, talk about the hustle that they played with, and talk about
yeah,
that's culture. So I think some of that is that. But even too, I think like if you look at coaches can stay too long just like players can stay too long. Like I think Belichick stayed in New England too long. I think he should have left when
yeah.
Brady left. So I think the same thing with Tom. I'm not saying he's not coach worthy. I think his message would go over well with some people who haven't heard that and haven't had that type of discipline. Let's say a team like a Jacksonville. You already got a quarterback in place. You got some talent. You just need somebody that's giving you a different message from just a different space that you haven't heard before. I just think what he's doing now is just a little stale now, and I'm just not like, man, when you get into that ball control and you don't have a quarterback in place that can get you places. And then you think about wide receiver. I mean, you got a young talent in George Pickens, but can't give him the ball. And
Yeah,
here we talking about George Pickens. George Pickens ain't gonna do but so much because he can't get nobody can get him the ball. You know what I'm
I
saying?
they're gonna work it out, man. I think they'll work it out. He's got a young nucleus. He's just got to teach him how to win, and really get that defense going, and they're gonna work it out, man. I ain't even gonna bash on them because
I think
when I
Pittsburgh
know
will
it's
pick the
teams
top
out there
five
doing
this year.
worse. It's a lot worse teams out there right now than in a worse situation than the Steelers in. But anyway,
Pittsburgh will be picking
go
top
ahead.
10 this year, Smitty.
So what now?
Pittsburgh will be picking top 10 this year.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to end the show because it's obvious Pace
Trust.
is on the hard drugs by saying that stuff. No, the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. They're going to barely get in, but they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think so. That's just me being. I'm gonna say it. That's me being biased though.
Bet some cigars on it. Your choice of cigars, Bessemer cigars on it. I just bet you they don't even make the playoffs.
It's a bet because Cincinnati look like trash. Baltimore's gonna get in. Kansas City's gonna get in. Who else from the AFC is really a lock to get in?
You got Houston.
Okay, that's 3.
The Colts could possibly get in.
See, there we go. That's what. But again, match them up against the Steelers. And I'm not saying that I had to look back at their schedule, but you know what? I take that bet.
The Jets.
I'll definitely take that bet. I'll take that bet. I don't think Aaron Rodgers finished the season. I think he's too arrogant to even finish the season. So you said it. You got me and you on here. We betted some cigars on whether the Steelers make the playoffs or not. I think they're gonna make it. You say they're gonna end up picking in the top 10, but we're gonna see. I think when I look at that AFC and the way it's shaping up, I think Pittsburgh gets in there because if they made it last year, and I think they were worse last year than they are now, and you talked about it. You got Russell Wilson, even though he's not, he may not even play this week, but yet he's still there, and with him holding that clipboard, kind of helping that young quarterback along, I think they're gonna be better than what a lot of people think. So we'll see. It's gonna be a long season, but I think we'll see.
I just want my sticks, man. That's all I want. I just want my sticks.
Man, it's time to end this show, man, because you know that ain't gonna happen. Anyway, Pace, man, another dope show. We're gonna come back next week, and we're gonna talk a little bit more football, some more sports culture, and we're gonna jump back on it. And we hope everybody's appreciating the show. And maybe next week, man, we can take some questions from the fans and have them. You know what, fans, send in some questions. If you got some questions for me and Pace that you want us to answer on the air, send them on in. We're going to drop their information in the link when you tune in. So click the link, see the email address, and we're going to read some questions live next week on the show.